Hello, am I live? I'm live. You are live. Congratulations, you are live. Hello, folks. How are we doing? My hair is growing back. Oh, I'm very shiny today, haven't I? Probably should put a bit of foundation on. Yeah, it's very shiny. It'll be fine. Or maybe I can just. I'm always having to readjust this light every time. It's like I get online and then I'm like, oh, no, wait. No, the lighting isn't amazing. Or is it? Let's see. No. Do you know what? Let's go for super shiny face. There we go. How are we all doing today? You're all very welcome to the June live stream. And yeah, this was a little bit late. In fairness, in my defense. Hi, Crystal. How are we doing? Yeah, in my defense, June was insane. Just trying to get the Stonewall video finished and done within Pride Month, and yeah, I mean, the last couple of nights, or the last days leading up to it, because I wanted to have it launched in time for that final weekend, and yeah, the very last day I pulled an all-nighter. It's kind of become a bit of a tradition for me now to pull an all-nighter while I'm in the kind of final furlong of editing the videos. Thankfully, this video turned out to be a little bit quicker to edit than a lot of previous videos, because I've found my editing process is getting longer and longer as I'm going, because I'm actually doing more animation in the videos. If you go back and look at some of my early videos, there's still not a lot of animation in comparison to a lot of videos. Like, it's still very simple animation, but there is a lot more movement in more recent videos than in like some of the very first ones. So that's quite interesting. Like in my Cold War video, for example, from what I can remember, like if there's a big list of different bullet points, now I will boom, 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 have each bullet point pop up, as opposed to before where it was just have them all up at the beginning of the evening. But yeah, so and also one of the reasons why it was less complicated to edit was because a lot of my videos, they have so many like map overlays, like showing soldiers moving across a map, or this country being here, that country being there. And funnily enough, this video didn't actually have as many things. It theoretically could have done an entire map of like the block of the Stonewall Inn to really give more geography, but I kind of ran out of time, and there were certain elements of the video that my video, I can always improve my videos. And as I think it was Peter Jackson said, films are never finished. They escape. They're like, they are released. And so it's quite funny in that regard. So for anybody who is new here, or anybody watching this back at a later date, this is the Patreon exclusive. So you can interact here right now for the next hour and a half. It all depends on how the banter goes. And yeah, so you can go and support me on patreon.com/John D. Ruddy. And I would like to welcome some of our new patrons this week. Catherine Gilks, Jesse O'Leahan, and Sean Bates, and Mycroft, with a very interesting spelling of Mycroft. So thank you so much for all of your support so far. Here's to many, many, many more. But yeah, so this evening there's a couple of Patreon questions, and also we have the results of the poll for what the next video is going to be. But yeah, it was interesting just seeing the comments on the Stonewall video. It was really interesting because, I mean, I in the past I've often tried to be balanced. I always try to be balanced in my videos, like, and like, in my Irish history videos, for example, quite often Irish history can be very much, and then the British did this to us, and then the British did that to us, and then the British did that to us. I I always kind of insist on. I mean, it was still very lopsided. I mean, the British subjugation of Ireland was pretty total in various points in our history. But some people have a tendency of skimming over the 1641 massacre, for example, where the Catholic Confederacy uprising, where many Protestant planters in Ulster were massacred, which led to a very strong. I mean, there was already an animosity there between Catholics and Protestants, because people were coming over and taking land and claiming it as their own. But then that didn't really help. Oh, hello. I'm getting notifications. I'm going to mute this. But yeah, so the animosity was already there, but then it didn't help that there were big massacres that the Catholics then took it out on the Protestant planters, and some of the terrible things, like in Portadown, it was really, really harsh. Many of the planters were forced to jump into the River Bann at gunpoint, and this was in the middle of November. Many people died. It was not a nice point in Irish history, and that's why Mr. Cromwell, he's always sitting behind me, staring at me. Oliver Cromwell came over. It was one of the many reasons why, was to quell these rowdy Catholics and to show them the pure way of worshiping the Lord. But yeah, so I always try to be balanced. However, I think I've addressed this before on one of these live streams. I have sometimes shown more often than not, I have shown my political leanings. I'm going to put this on silent too, John. None of these are on silent at the moment. I have shown my political leanings on before. I mean, I am a lefty, and even in my earlier ones where I was maybe being a little bit more coy about it, you can still see it in there. Like my World War I video, which is one of my earliest ones, very anti-imperialist. It was a woeful imperialist war, and did not like it. But yeah, then we got to the Presidents of the United States videos, and the common thread amongst the comment section in Presidents of the United States Part 3 is, it was really well balanced until you get to Reagan, and then it starts to get very biased. And on one hand, I would kind of agree with that. On the other hand, everything that I said about Reagan was factually accurate. And I think, like, my thing is, I find it difficult to find something positive, like massively positive, to say about Ronald Reagan, because where a lot of people would be of the opinion, oh well, like, I mean, he did some great things for the economy, and the 1980s America was a great place to be. And I can't help but see that a lot of the policies that were put in place, the neoliberalism that was put in place then, became the runaway train that tanked the economy in 2008 and beyond. I mean, capitalism rises and falls and crashes and burns and rebuilds itself and pretends like the previous a million crashes didn't happen. But the way I always imagine the peaks and troughs of capitalism is like a boa constrictor, where the way the boa constrictor works, as far as I understand it, is they don't like crush your bones or they don't strangle their prey. They simply suffocate their prey. They don't allow their prey to breathe anymore, and they don't allow them the space to breathe. And so they wrap around them, and their prey breathes in, and it's when they breathe out that the boa constrictor tightens, and they breathe in a little bit, and then it tightens again, and then they breathe in a little bit, and then it tightens again. So it's every time it breathes out. As far as I understand it, zoologists, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that whole idea of it lets it expand a little bit, and then it gains more ground, and it just seems like this system has been skimming the cream off the top for so long. And the thing is, there are less and less people on the top being able to skim it off, because each time there's an economic boom, it swells the middle class, and some people even maybe make it into the upper class. But then when the crash happens, those who aren't completely economically steadfast in where they are, any of the ones who are sitting on a precarious investment that may or may not pay off, and now in an economic downturn completely falls flat, they're the people who they're going to lose their assets. And who's going to take the assets? The folks at the top. And they just sweep in and they grab more, and they're like, hi, I get more. And like we saw it in Ireland, all of these vulture funds, as they're called, where all of these properties that became available because those who had bought the properties could no longer afford them, and so the properties were then sold off. Not only were they sold off, they were sold off at a ridiculously cheap price, but only those with the spare change at the top were able to fork out. So they were able to ascertain more wealth from the economic crash. So forgive me if I think that this system is deeply flawed and deeply problematic. And the fact that those at the top, I mean, like 50 years ago, you were chatting about the top 20%. And then 20 years ago, you were chatting about the top 1%. Now you're talking about the 0.1%, people diss Bernie Sanders for going on about the top 1%, but he's true. He's bang on. And I'm heartbroken that Bernie Sanders didn't get the nomination, because Bernie Sanders is what the United States needs, and Bernie Sanders is what the world needs. But yeah, so with regards balance in that video, so I'm super harsh on Reagan, but that's because the war on drugs increased incarceration, particularly of many African Americans, and he completely ignored the AIDS crisis for years, which resulted in thousands, tens of thousands of people dying. And hold on a minute, my dog is being a little bit rowdy. And I'm just going to see if I can make him be a bit less rowdy. Go, shush. There we go. Hopefully. That was my dog. His name is Koo. And he's a German short-haired pointer. And he's wonderful. And if you go... No, he's barking. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. If you go onto my Instagram page, at John D. Ruddy, you can go and... Well, I don't have any photos of him up yet. But they'll come. They'll be coming. So yeah. So back to my roundabout point of what I was talking about. So, I mean, I know there is a very broad political spectrum of people who come and watch my videos. And I saw that particularly from that video where I diss on Reagan, I praise Clinton, probably praised him a little bit too much. I do intend on doing I do intend on making a more balanced. I think I'm going to do like a full half-hour supercut of all the presidents with more details, including how many slaves the earlier presidents owned. But yeah, I think I might do that later in the year. It shouldn't take me too long because most of it's already done. But yeah, I might just do a nice big supercut. And yeah, I praised Clinton maybe a little bit too much. Totally stand by what I said about George W. Bush. Oh, and also George H.W. Bush. You know, and yeah, I mean Obama. Like, watch what I said about Obama. I wasn't completely yay about Obama because, like, there was a lot of praise because, funnily enough, he actually did have a fairly decent positive presidency in a lot of ways. I mean, he still bombed the hell out of Yemen, and as positive as the hit on Osama bin Laden was, it's still kind of, I still find it really dodgy that basically an American chopper just flew into Pakistan and bumped a guy off. And yeah, because everyone was like, oh, well, it was Osama bin Laden, it's okay. And I mean, yeah, but like Sokovia Accords much? Like, it's just, yeah. So that'll probably come later in the year. But yeah, what am I talking about? Why am I talking about this? Why have I taken 15 minutes to talk about this? Basically, I was so proud of all of you folks, of my subscribers in the comment section of my Stonewall riots video, because there's no kind of sidelining the story of the Stonewall riots. There's no sidelining the story of LGBTQ plus people across the world throughout history. And I know it's a very divisive topic. Unfortunately, it's a very divisive topic, and there are many people out there who completely disagree with all of that, and or some people disagree with some of it, but then I just I don't see the rationale in going out to make someone's life a living hell. Like, the whole thing of, and I don't know a lot about this personally, but living in a world where you may not know if that world accepts you, like, that must be a very difficult thing. And for that world to continue to not accept you, and yeah, it's great, and you do see it more and more, and particularly with young people, it's so positive to see more and more young people who seem to be more open to coming out earlier and sooner and coming to terms with who they are, and that's wonderful. But it's still not a perfect world out there, and there are people out there who are antagonistic towards LGBTQ plus people. And yeah, I mean, I've got my breakout hoodie on from the time I worked with Donegal Youth Service. Amazing job those folks do. Yeah, so I was so proud to see the predominant the predominant wave in the comment section of the Stonewall riots was love, was support, was there was a combination of people going, "Oh yeah, yeah, brilliant! Of course, this has to be told." And of course, there were some detractors out there. There were some people saying, "Oh well, what are you doing with this liberal agenda?" And I'm like, on one hand, like I wouldn't necessarily call it an agenda, like, because as a lot of people were pointing out, it's a point in history. Hold on a minute. Sorry about this. Cool. You have to be barking. There we go. This is going to bark now anyway in like 5 minutes. Thanks, Crystal. I'll tell Koo you say hi. So what was I saying? Yeah, so it was wonderful to see. Now there were some detractors in there who were like, why are you covering this? But the majority of people in there were saying, well, no, this is part of history. And even the way that I presented it, I did try to be as balanced, as balanced as I could. I mean, I told it in a fairly factual way. Like they're taking it from different points in history, like starting in ancient Greece, where homosexuality was accepted. I mean, they had a lot of other social hang-ups when it came to sexual relationships, but I wasn't going to go into that there. But you can look into that in your own time. Oh man, Koo, seriously. He'll be fine. He's just being dramatic. Yeah, it was wonderful just to see such an outpouring of gratitude, of people thanking me for telling the story. I mean, I really wanted to tell the story, and I wanted to elevate the story to, like, I mean, who am I to elevate it, cis white guy, but I've told the story of World War I, World War II, and the Cold War, and the French Revolution, the American Revolution. Like, the Stonewall riots is as important as these things. It's an important historical event, and and to some people, it's maybe, at least not directly, or people realize that it has affected people so much, but to so many people in this world, that it affected their history, it affected their lives so much, that I really wanted to tell that story. And I was raging that I didn't tell it the previous year for the 50th anniversary, but I was getting married that summer, so it was just it was a little bit it was a busy summer. And I think I did the War of 1812. Yeah, I was getting married to a Canadian lady, so I decided to do a video about the War of 1812 last year. So that's partially where that came out of. But yeah, it was wonderful to see, and it was really exciting, really heartwarming. Someone even commented where they said that they came out to their parents after watching that video. So and it went really well. So if you're watching this, congratulations, and I hope everything continues to be good and positive. Yeah, I'm just I was really happy to see that, and I'm really excited to make more things, like that. And like, I mean, I am like, the videos are It's not going to be quote unquote complete social justice warrior-esque the whole time, like, you know. But I do look forward to making more videos like that. Speaking of which, the Patreon poll came in, and the results are here for what the next video is going to be. So the Monarchs of England Part 2 got 3 votes. The Space Race got 1 vote. The Korean War got 0 votes. Interestingly enough. Israel and Palestine got 3 votes. Civil Rights Movement got 5 votes. So the next video will be the Civil Rights Movement. And so, yeah, there we go. And I think it is quite an apt time to be doing that video, I think. I think in the future, I may give less options, maybe so we can really concentrate the votes. But it's just interesting there, even just to see what the popular ones are. And I am really looking forward to getting back to the Monarchs of England series, because I have most of those actually scripted, because I had some of them scripted from ages ago. And then last year I watched The Crown and was just like, I'm super interested in this big long lineage, this big long history. So I was like, I'm going to watch, or I'm going to write this. You know, an Irish guy writing a video all about the Monarchs of England. Fun. And in fairness, like people watching me first, like there wasn't a lot of English bashing in part 1. But then again, England hadn't invaded Ireland at that point. We'll see. We'll get there. Henry II. Was it Henry II? Yeah, I think so. We'll get there. It'll be fine. So yeah. So we have a question on Patreon. Yeah. By the way, if you noticed, there it was a relatively close vote. There were not a lot. As a Brit, I sit on the edge of my seat. Excellent, Crystal. It'll be fun. We'll all enjoy it. Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah, we have. As you may have noticed, it was a fairly close vote. There were not a lot of votes in there, because at the moment, Patreon support is not massive. For myself, I would obviously prefer more Patreon support. So please, if you do, if you want to have your say in these votes, come on, $1 per month, and that's, it's a little way of throwing a dollar in the hat at the end of my videos, and that keeps me going, and it supports a lot of different creative endeavors that I do. But for certain people, for $5 plus folks, we have guaranteed questions answered. So where are we? Posts. Here we go. And so quiet. Koo has become silent. Good for him. He's probably fallen asleep. For anyone who doesn't know, Koo is the Irish for hound. So that's where we got his name. Guaranteed questions for June stream. There we go. View. I am a master of technology. Not really. I'm terrible. I'm actually going to take a... I always find the Patreon website takes ages to load. Does anybody else notice that? Huh. Oh, there we go. So Jesse O'Leahan asks, oh, it's reloading again. But I think I caught what it was. Could you do a video about the Wild West? There's an interesting topic, because one would ask as well, where do you start? Where do you finish with regards to the Wild West? It's an interesting one, and there's a lot of history there. I've touched on little bits of it just with my presidents of the United States, just with the expansion into the West. That would be really cool. It's a very broad one, very, very broad one. But I would be really interested to explore that because it's something that I would really look forward to learning a lot about myself, because I know bits of it, but I don't know all the bits of it. So that would be a really interesting one. I was really fascinated when I was in California, just the old Mexican foundations of California. I mean, obviously there were older foundations as well, but because of course California used to be a part of Mexico before the Mexican American War, which I'll probably do a video about that at some point as well. But I was really intrigued just how much influence there culturally there still is there. I loved when I was in Los Angeles, the train is bilingual. It's in both English and Spanish, which I thought was really cool. I mean, it's great to have multiculturalism. But yeah, no, I'd be fascinated to do that, to find some of the major points in Wild West history and try to work out probably where. I suppose it would probably start. I'd probably start after the American Revolution and look at the frontiers, and as the frontier pushed, because that was the Wild West, pushing forward and pushing forward and pushing out. But yeah, that would be very interesting. So Jesse, I'll put it on the list. I have no idea when I'm going to get to it, because that list is a long list, but I definitely will put it on there, and I may put it on a poll sooner rather than later because you asked so nicely. So yeah, what else? Oh, so speaking. By the way, Crystal, while you're here, if you have any questions, fire away. Go for it. But while I was doing my all-nighter, so I have a couple of albums which tend to be my all-nighter music, which just sits in the background and pumps away while I try to stay awake. Literally, I've done it sometimes. I'm like falling asleep while I'm editing. I'm like, oh. But with so usually Bob Marley's greatest hits, ABBA Gold, they're kind of two of my go-to late night jams. Sometimes Tenacious D, Rise of the Phoenix, for whatever reason. I think they were the three albums that I listened to on my first all-nighter doing these. I think the first all-nighter I did was for the Napoleonic Wars video, because that was back in 2015, because I was doing that video I put together in 2 weeks, because I had written the script, because I was like, right, I'm going to be very proactive. I'm going to write a whole pile of scripts in advance. And that is where the first draft of the Monarchs of England came from. The bones of that script, which I just released not too long ago, that was written in 2015. And I finally got around to coming back to it, and then I padded it out and made it. It was interesting actually revisiting it, because I painted in much broader strokes in 2015 than I do now. My videos are more detailed than they were in 2015, which is interesting. So yeah, I had just finished writing this Napoleonic Wars video. I think I had just finished producing the American Revolution video, and so I was like, right, cool, Napoleonic Wars, let's find out, blah blah blah, and researched it and wrote the script, and then what did I do? Why is he barking so much? Oh my god, you're embarrassing me, Koo. But yeah, so I had written the script of the Napoleonic Wars, and it was like end of May, and I realized the 200th. Oh my god, sorry, he's distracting me. Genius, Koo, stop barking. Bark, 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 bark. Bark, 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 bark. No. Yeah. You've toys and you've got bones out there. Just it's okay. He will be fine. And afterwards I'm gonna bring him inside and he can lie down in his bed and he can chill out, and maybe if he's really good, he might be able to get up on the couch and cuddle up with me. We'll see. But yeah, so end of May 2015, and I realize the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo was in 2 weeks. And I was like, I can do this. I can do this. And I worked day and night to get those done, which probably explains why it's, if you watch it again, it is slightly rough around the edges in some parts. I think my illustration of Nelson, he has 2 eyes in that illustration. It is inaccurate because I'm pretty sure he had 1 eye when he died and 1 arm. I got that detail at least. So yeah, I think I may need to revisit that video at some point. And also, if I had had more time, I would have absolutely done more naval action of all the soldiers and all the Navy people around Nelson during the Battle of Trafalgar. But yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, so it was coming up, and the anniversary was the very next day. And I was like, I need to work through the night. And I worked through the night, and I listened to ABBA Gold. I listened to Bob Marley's Greatest Hits, and I listened to Tenacious D, Rise of the Phoenix, which was an album that I had only just heard. I used to be a massive Tenacious D fan when I was a teenager, and I mean, I still am. But yeah, so I was listening to that album. But this time around, I discovered, so shout out to Quentin Reviews, because I listened to another album. Quentin Reviews pointed me in the direction of an absolute experience of an album, with 3 albums actually. So Neil Cicierega, if you are not familiar with that name, you may very well be familiar with some of his content. Way back in the day, you may have heard of the Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny. This is the Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny. Good guys, bad guys, and explosions as far as the eye can see. Yeah, so that was him. Also, Snape, Severus Snape, Dumbledore, Snape, Severus Snape, Dumbledore. That was him. He also did that. and loads of other ones like the Nicolas Cage one, or is it Nicolas Cage? No, not Nicolas Cage. Adrian Brody wandering, just walking from one place to the next. He did those. But he also, yeah, I know, Crystal. It's insane. Like my mind was blown, and so he created these 3 albums based around Smash Mouth, All Star, and I think they're called mouth moods, or they're various. What are they called? Hold on, I have to find these. I think the trilogy is called Mouth Moods. As in Smash Mouth Moods. Let me just, yeah, Mouth Moods. Oh, that's the third one. That's the third one. Let's see, what are they called? Yeah, Mouth Sounds, Mouth Silence, and Mouth Moods. Oh my God. It's sure, how are we? What is the crack? Hello from Letterkenny to the walled city. So yeah, I listened to Mouth Moods, Mouth Sounds, Mouth Silence. It is amazing. Not every single track is amazing, but the majority of them I thought were fantastic. He mashes up, he remixes different songs. He takes the music of one song, Derry represent. Or is it London Derry? No, it's Derry. It's Derry. Derry Columkill. Old school. Derry Columkill. But he takes songs like one of my favorites. It's called Party Rangers. Takes the music of Power Rangers, the guitar, and puts the lyrics of Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus over it, and it is so listenable. He mashes up. He takes the music. He mashes up Smooth Criminal and 1 Week by Bare Naked Ladies. It's been 1 week since you looked at me. But like, if you think about it, Smooth Criminal and that chicken to China to Chinese chicken, it was, chicken to China to Chinese chicken. It's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, I know the crack with London Derry and Derry High. Yeah, it's fun times. But yeah, go and listen to these albums. It is bizarre. It has a wonderful sense of humor. There's one, I think it's called Psych Shack, possibly. It takes now, controversial. I despise the song Love Shack. It's just not my jam. Really annoys me. In fact, the B-52s, no harm, guys, they just anger me. I don't know what it is. The combination of their voices, just no. I'm not a B-52s fan, but they take Love Shack, the vocals of Love Shack, and put it over the soundtrack of Psycho. And of course, I mean, it's great because it's a motel and it's a crazy motel and they go there to do stuff. And genius. It's so good. And it's Love Shack, baby, Love Shack. It's great. What else do they have? Oh, there we go. There's The Best, which essentially takes on a ton of different songs regarding the best. I mean, so you've got Best of You by Foo Fighters, and that's the kind of main core of it. But then it goes into Simply the Best, and then but each time they have Best, it's Dave Grohl's Best, and it's so funny. Like, because then at the end it like breaks into Pokemon. I want to be the very best. It's great. It's wonderful. What else is there? Yeah, because then he has the music of Jackson 5, I Want You Back, with all of these news reports from the late 90s about how all these kids are getting involved in this thing called Pokemon. It's great. It's great. I actually forgot about the scare of Pokemon, where parents were like, oh my god, all these children are getting obsessed with Pokemon. I was one of those children who was obsessed with Pokemon. I can still remember several verses of the Poke Rap. Electro, Diglett, Nidoran, Mankey, Venusaur, Rattata, Fearow, Pidgey, Seeking, Jolteon, Dragonite, Ghastly, Ponyta, Vaporeon, Poliwrath, Butterfree. Oh, yeah, I was one of those kids. There's a photo of me wearing a Pokemon jumper, playing Pokemon Blue on my Game Boy from that time, and I'm so glad this photo exists. It's absolutely me from that time. Yeah, I was obsessed with Pokemon. But yeah, so just go and listen to it. And then of course, I mean, the core, it always, all roads lead back to Smash Mouth, all roads lead back to All Star. And more often than not, it works. Like, there's a wonderful one where it mashes up All Star with what's it called? The Modest Mouse song, the dun 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 dun. My voice is not great at the moment. But yeah, like, some of the songs are really good. Like, some of them are really weird. Oh, one of my favorite ones is, I know I'm going on and on about this, but I have to tell you, I have my wife tortured with this. She hates it. And it's understandable. It is very much an acquired taste. But there's this one track where they take the music of Crocodile Rock, Elton John, and the vocals of, what is it? Is it Chop Suey? Yeah. It's Chop Suey, System of a Down. And wake up, grab your brush and put a little makeup. But so it's like, wake up, grab your brush and put a little makeup, watch it find a way to shake up. I don't think you trust do 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 and do 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 my do 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 self-righteous suicide. Highly recommend those 3 albums. Weird, very weird, but also the way he remixes some of the songs, and he rearranges the lyrics. So he's got Eye of the Tiger mixed with, is it In Excess? The bow, 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 it's brilliant. And so they're taking the lyrics of Eye of the Tiger, but it's like, rising up back on the streets, took my time with my tiger, too many times it happens to tigers, you trade your passion for tigers, and all this kind of stuff. It's hilarious, very entertaining. But yeah, that's mouth moods and mouth silence and mouth sounds. Just stick it on and enjoy the madness. Enjoy the madness. Any questions in there, by the way, while we're in here? Also, just to give you an update of, so this week I have been getting my podcast, the first season of my podcast, finished. For anyone who doesn't know, I have been producing a podcast. Cool. Stop interrupting me. Terrible. But yeah, been producing a podcast called Where Many Have Gone Before. And if you don't get the reference, the very heavily implied reference, it's terrible. But yeah, Where Many Have Gone Before, the podcast where I, John D. Ruddy, watch Star Trek for the very first time. I have been watching the original series of Star Trek, and I am loving it. It's so good. So each week I watch 2 new episodes, and well, 2 new episodes, 2 50-year-old episodes, 60 years, 1967, 67. My arithmetic is terrible. 67, 77, 87, 97, 77, 2017, 50, 53 years. Yay. Me math. And yeah, I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. Yesterday, I came to the first episode, which I absolutely despised, which was a lot of fun to talk about because, like, I'd been riding high for so long. There were 1 or 2 episodes which didn't quite work for me, but I had something good to say about them. This one episode, I was just like, I hate this episode. It's so badly written. It's so badly structured. They go in circles. They literally do the same thing over and over and over again, and it just drove me insane. But yeah, the podcast is called Where Many Have Gone Before, and you can find it on Spotify, on Apple Music, on Whooshka, on Deezer. It's in loads of different places. Because strangely enough, I never watched Star Trek growing up. I watched bits of Star Trek. Like I've seen the J.J. Abrams film, the first one, several times. I love it. I'm really looking forward to going the long way around to revisiting it, and having a much greater appreciation for the details. And what else? Sharon, must get you on the podcast sometime. What else? Yeah, I'd seen bits of Next Generation. I'd seen episodes of it, but like nothing to really cement going, I remember this episode, and I had seen nothing of the original series. There were elements of it, like, I knew about the Klingons, I knew about the Romulans, I knew about, Live Long and Prosper, all the iconic stuff. Interestingly enough, it's near the end of season 1 and Spock still hasn't done this, which is, I'm also like discovering the first appearance of these like iconic moments, and still Spock hasn't done this, nor has he said live long and prosper, which is cool. I'm intrigued to see where that comes. But yeah, we just had the first appearance ever of the Klingons, and it's super racist. So I'm also kind of exploring the politics of it, and because on one hand the show is super progressive for the time. The diversity in the cast, the diversity in the crew of the Enterprise, it's very, very impressive in that way. And there's certain aspects of it which are wonderfully forward thinking. And then on the other hand, it's a show from the 1960s. So a lot of misogyny, a lot of problematic politics. And the Klingons are dark-skinned with like Fu Manchu facial hair. The coding is deep and shallow at the same time. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun exploring that, because that's been a conversation which has been raging at the moment, is revisiting old TV shows and whether or not we should, because there's loads of people losing their mind because a streaming service took down an episode of Faulty Towers for 5 minutes to add an edited version. Basically, the episode was the Germans, the famous one where Basil Fawlty, if he wasn't if he wasn't awkward enough, and if he wasn't as much of a prick as it was, he gets a head injury, so he loses all aspect of what to say and what not to say. Clive's Core talked about how he helped create the look. Oh, really? Oh, I must look more into this about the creation of the Klingons. But what was I saying? You distracted me. I've actually lost my trail of thought. I have the worst short-term memory. Where had my mind moved on to? Because it moved me on the Klingons, hadn't it? Oh yeah, Faulty Towers. Faulty Towers. Yeah. So the news reports were saying episode of Faulty Towers has been banned, and no, it was not. It was played car and worked with the makeup guy. Oh, interesting. Coleco's played core and worked with the makeup guy, and interestingly enough, because I noted that that look seems to be very much what the kind of core Klingon look, core Klingon look. See what I did there? Would look like. I mean, obviously they don't have the forehead ridges yet, but yeah. Oh, that's interesting. But yeah, so the news was saying that Faulty Towers was banned, or an episode of Faulty Towers was banned, and basically there was a line in it where the major, one of the characters, the old retired major who has a lot of politically incorrect things to say every so often, he says the mother of all politically incorrect things in this episode, where he says the N-word. And in the context of the episode, here we go. I can see the humorous side, the humorous intent. You know, I can see where the joke is in there, where, oh, this is funny because this older guy is super racist and has no filter to actually, that he'll just go out and say these things out loud. I get the joke, and arguably it is funny, but at the same time, you know, having that word as the punchline to a joke in this day and age, it has not aged well. And I think in like 2013, John Cleese and or I think whoever it was, they were rebroadcasting the show, and they actually approached John Cleese about editing out just this one joke, because they were like, look, this doesn't right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, many channels, thanks Crystal, many channels had been showing the edited version for years, but I think some streaming services had the unedited version, and so yeah, and so they were taking it offline so that they could put on the new version. And so loads of people were going crazy, going, "Oh my god, we can't even, we can't even watch Faulty Towers. We can't be trusted to watch Faulty Towers anymore." And there's been a lot of outrage stirring from both sides, but yeah, there's been a lot of outrage stirring because, you know, with this came the thing of, oh, they're taking away, they've taken off Gone with the Wind from HBO Max. And it's like, well, yeah, but they're going to be recontextualizing it. They're going to be putting a little disclaimer at the start saying, hey, look, this was made in a time when people thought, when things were different, and yeah, this has very problematic views of slavery, and yeah, it's, so people were going crazy because they were taking away this historic film. Now, I only saw Gone with the Wind for the first time maybe about 6 months ago. Oh my god, what an amazing film. It is, like, just from a filmmaking perspective, from a technique perspective, oh my god, it is epic, it is grand, it's amazing. And like the way that they got some of the shots, the way that they produced it, like the burning of Atlanta, they actually burnt down a whole pile of their old film sets. Like you can actually see the burning of King Kong's gate in that sequence. If you look closely, you can see the burning of King Kong's gate. But it's an amazing film, and an absolute kind of cornerstone in filmmaking. And but at the same time, it's a film from the perspective of the Confederacy. And not that there's anything wrong per se with presenting this perspective, but in particular, its depiction of slaves and slavery, it's very wish-washy. It's very, oh, well, the slaves seem to like it here. The slaves seem to enjoy being slaves. And, and after the Civil War was over, the slaves actually came back and helped the family. It's like, which wasn't necessarily unheard of, but if this is someone's only experience of watching something to do with slavery, then one might think, well, maybe it wasn't all that bad, because not everybody does go and do the research. Some people take their historical education from their movies, so yeah, and it's fine to watch this film. It's in the same way as Birth of a Nation is a deeply important film, and it's about the KKK and presents the KKK in a heroic light, but its importance in showing how they vilify Black people and the Black man in particular, who's coming to get their women, that image and that concept, which would evolve into the monster coming to take away, like, look at King Kong, a big giant ape coming and stealing the white woman. That image would evolve and change, so much so that by the time it had evolved and changed so much, we didn't even realize it, and yet it still had this root there. And therefore, and not only that, but The Birth of a Nation, I'm pretty sure, was the first feature-length film as well. Yeah, when things are contextualized, when they are put in, like Warner Brothers did that a couple of years ago, where they had a disclaimer at the start of some of their older animations where they said, yeah, some of these cartoons are a little bit racist by today's standards, but we're presenting them here because editing it out or taking it out would be equivalent of book burning, or would be a disservice to like, seeing how bad it was allows us to see how far we've come. So that's important. And but that little piece of context at the start is very important, as opposed to just watching it without the context and going, oh, this is fine, this is fun, this is great. And because not everybody is media literate, not everybody realizes how much we take in these tropes. Like, there are some tropes which we see, like, because this was the big discussion that people were having about Fawlty Towers and about not West Side Story, although West Side Story is another one. Where people were saying, can people not be trusted to make up their own minds? And yeah, sometimes, because comedy as well is always the first thing to age badly. So let me just see the context. Yeah, I know. So people might have to go and buy a DVD again. Could you imagine? Do you think you'd ever do a video about the British or US slave trade? I realize you have a long list of to-dos. Yeah, well, I mean, that elements of that will probably crop into my video about the civil rights movement, just in a context of where it comes from. Because, put it this way, the civil rights movement video will not end in the 1960s, because it's an ongoing thing. So no, first feature film was Il Inferno, not Birth of a Nation. Thank you for that clarification. Take that, KKK. But yeah, so some people were arguing, well, can people not be trusted to make up their own minds? And yeah, sometimes you'll be watching a film, particularly an older film. Like myself and my wife sat down to watch 7 Year Itch not too long ago. We actually couldn't finish it. I mean, that being said, we were both really tired, but we've kind of not been rushing to get back to it because, I mean, it has not aged well whatsoever. Like I mean, I really enjoy Some Like It Hot, and it hasn't aged as badly. But 7 Year Itch, for anyone who doesn't know, it's the classic Marilyn Monroe movie of where the skirt is blown up and she's holding it down. But it's essentially about a businessman who his wife and family leave the city for the summer, and Marilyn Monroe moves in upstairs, and he essentially spends at least the first half of the movie fantasizing over her and fantasizing over the women that he works with, and it's just like, but I think like that film was 1957, I think 55, 56, 57, late 50s. But yeah, like some things age well, some things don't, and comedy more often than not is the first thing to, excuse me, to age badly. And like Faulty Towers, for the most part, impressively has aged very well for the most part. But like even if you think of, say, take Bill and Ted, for example, where most of it so far has aged really well, but then when they hug each other and they say to each other "fag," you're watching it and you're just like, ooh. And there was a lot of casual homophobia in movies like that in the 80s, even going into the 90s. And I mean, thankfully it's become less and less pervasive, but still, like those things, you'll still be watching going, oh, where people are like, oh, you wouldn't get away with that today. And it's like, where some people see that a negative, where, oh, you know, like the classic, oh, you couldn't make Blazing Saddles anymore. There's a fantastic video. I can't remember who made it, but it's a brilliant video. It's about that thing of, oh, they couldn't make Blazing Saddles anymore. The entire point of the video is you don't need to make Blazing Saddles anymore, because the Blazing Saddles was about picking apart the ridiculous hypocrisy of the Western genre, and and ever after that, the Western was always a parody after that. That's nobody could take Westerns seriously after that, because it just picked it apart. But yeah, so people are saying, oh well, people need to be, can people not be trusted to make up their own minds? And I would say that people need to become more media literate. People need to, because yeah, like as I said, I'm watching Star Trek and I'm able to discern, oh, maybe not that, that mightn't take that into today's society. But not necessarily everybody will notice that, or not necessarily everybody will see that, or because where some things are really obvious, like like watching Friends nowadays and seeing how horribly homophobic and transphobic it is. Story of the Kelly Gang from 1906 as the first feature film. Apologies, there you go. Thank you. But what was I saying? You've distracted me again. No, but yeah, like sometimes these tropes and things are much more obvious, but sometimes they're not so obvious. Like, I mean, like James Bond, for example, is one, and it's something that has changed over time. But at the same time, like there are all of these really deep, insidious uh, deep insidious tropes of, and it's not just Bond, actually, in so many movies, about getting the girl. It always gets the girl, and getting the girl as a prize at the end of the movie. You know, you do this and therefore you get the girl. And that is so insidious. And I mean, it affected me in my teens and early 20s of, you know, the whole idea of, or particularly for me, the big one was the friend zone. And the whole idea of, you know, oh no, you got stuck in the friend zone, and making your way out of the friend zone, or and elements of that. Whereas, you know, and this whole concept of, well, you know, they just don't see how much you like like them so far, or essentially, just because you have super strong feelings for someone does not mean that you are entitled to anything. You know, if they don't have the same feelings for you, tough. That's them. That, you know, you can't affect how someone else feels for you. Um, you know, and it's like, oh well, you know, they just need to get to know me better. It's like, get to know them more, but don't set yourself up for failure if they're, you know, if they're not, you know, in the quote unquote friend zone. Like, that's, it's like that those kind of things do ingrain in people's minds, and people are conscious of it, but a lot of people aren't. And bringing it around full circle to the Stonewall video, because I do touch on it very briefly in it, about queer coding and how insidious queer coding has been in movies. And, you know, some of the classic villains that so many Disney villains have are queer coded, like Scar. You know, you're so weird, you have no idea. Um, you know, Jafar as well, and Ursula, who is literally based on a drag queen. She is her image is based on Divine, and um, and then on, you know, on the flip side of that, you've got the likes of Agatha Trunchbull, who literally carries a pair of steel balls in a bag with her, you know, and, you know, why are all these women married? Um, and these things are, you know, sit in the mind, and if you're not conscious of them, if you're not paying attention to them, they can go under the radar, and they can really affect the way you look at the world. But yeah, so I'm not sure, was I going towards any other points there, but we're just chatting, just having the bants. Any final questions before we finish up? I managed to get through all of this without talking about J.K. Rowling. Oops. I said it out loud. She who shall not be named. Oh dear. Oh yeah. That's a fun episode, but I'm not going to get into that right now, because Twitter is all over that dumpster fire. Oh, what is it like being a living legend? Diamanda Hagen, thank you so much. What a question. What is it like to be a living legend? It's amazing. I love it. It's so good. Like, just when I walk into a place and people are like, wow, I can't believe we are in the presence of John D. Ruddy. This is phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah. Although it's funny though, because like, whenever I'm doing any project or any kind of publicity or anything, I'm always having to insist on putting the D in John D. Ruddy. I'm like, can you just make sure that it's John D. Ruddy? And I always hate doing it because I sound so pretentious when I'm doing it. But it's because John Ruddy is a Wolverhampton goalkeeper in England. And so when you Google John Ruddy, you get John Ruddy, the goalkeeper. So I am no longer John Ruddy. I'm John D. Ruddy. Although it's funny because it is finally starting to catch on. And again, and when I'm working with kids and doing drama workshops and history workshops, um, it's like, oh, it's John D. Ruddy. I'm like, yes, branding, it's catching on. But yes, that is what it is like to be a living legend. Oh, Christ. But yeah, so I think we shall wrap it up there for now. Thank you so much for joining. If you have made it this far, watching back at a later date, you can take part in these. These happen every month or so. I know this is like the 8th of July, and this is the June live stream, but it'll be fine. But yeah, so we will. Yeah, so if you want to take part in these, you can do so. Just go to patreon.com/John D. Ruddy. You can pledge as little as $1 a month. If you pledge $20 a month, you get a free book. And it'll be signed by me and like a personalized letter and stuff. Actually, you can also, if you pledge $10 a month, you get on top of the free book. Well, should have said this the other way around. You get a custom Maniman drawing by me, so I can draw a picture of you and your friends. I can draw a picture of an historical figure. I can draw a picture of a pop culture figure in Maniman form and post it out to you. There's also magnets involved. Magnets! And yeah, there's all sorts of wonderful, exciting benefits. But yeah, so please, if by all means, patreon.com/John D. Ruddy. Otherwise, folks, I shall leave you to it. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Diamanda Hagen. And I will chat to you soon and try to finish this live stream without being super awkward by hitting the end stream button. Are you sure you want to end your stream? Yes, I am. Goodbye. Damn it, it didn't click. There we go.